You wanna know why I'm cussing at you? Fucking asshole.
In the form of a photograph sent to Jenny,
Whatever.
specifically addressed to her, not the family. There was no return address on the letter, but it was postmarked in Kentucky. The photo was a man in his
Oh,
mid-20s.
what else?
George
That's
and
what
Jenny
you can
believed this
do.
could be their son Louis, who was 9 at the time of the fire. The man in the picture had the same dark brown eyes, dark curly hair, strong straight nose, and upwardly tilting left eyebrow. On the back, it had a handwritten note. Quote, Louis Sauter, I love brother Frankie, Lil Boys, A90132 or 35, end quote. Yeah. Hired a private detective to go to Kentucky and find him. But strangely, the detective was never heard from again.
I think that's the first time I've ever heard of a detective going missing. That's like a fish drowning.
And you know what's strange about this? On the internet, nobody seems to really care about this point.
When a detective goes missing, you've got some pretty powerful adversaries. I'd say it's time to quit the game.
Some on the internet have theorized the detective took the money and ran. But nobody knows what happened to him for sure.
I don't think the detective would have taken the money and run, though, because if you're a private eye, unless it was if it was enough to survive for the rest of his life.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, why would he?
He's probably built up a nice client base. He's got throwaways Rolodex.
It's not like that. Like they gave him $1 million.
Right.
It was probably like $5,000. That's what the
Enough for a
poster
few
said.
sandwiches.
That's a lot. I mean, those are some big sandwiches, but yeah, point taken.
George Sauter passed away shortly after in 1969 at the age of 74, and Jenny Sauter passed away in 1989 at the age of 85. Sylvia, who was 2 at the time, is the last remaining Sauter child alive. She maintains that her siblings did not die in the fire that night. Jenny Henthorne, Sylvia's daughter, told the Times West Virginian to post any information on websleuths.com. Quote, "My mom promised my grandmother that she would never let the story die. That's what my brother and I are doing now." And after all these years, the question still remains. What really happened to the Sauter children that one fateful night? Was this truly the result of a tragic house fire? Or were the children actually kidnapped? Hopefully, for the sake of the remaining family, all of these questions will be answered. But for now, the case remains unsolved. I do think that there was some foul play.
Something's going on. Someone took those kids.
You think they're still alive today?
Because they're still out there, I think. I believe they're out there.
They would have to be, right? If you have a parent who ever told you that they were stolen in a fire and giving them a wonderful breakfast the next day, let us know.
You just.
I'm just glad you didn't blame it on aliens. No ghosts here, no aliens.
I mean, can you rule out that they were abducted?
No.
That's what I wanted to hear. You killed? Well, we got it. We're in Rippertown now.
Rip City.
This is what the people wanted. We're gonna bag us a Ripper today.
They're gonna slap the cuffs on them.
It's been over 100 years. Who better to solve it than the boys?
I mean, if we don't, I'm hanging my head in shame that I'm never going back to America.
Go back to
No.
the States. Well,
Oh,
here we go.
any of you seen a Ripper?
This week on BuzzFeed Unsolved, in our season premiere, we investigate Jack the Ripper, perhaps the most infamous serial killer of all time. Hundreds of suspects have been named for this case, and it has baffled investigators and ripperologists alike for over 100 years.
But it's not gonna baffle the boys.
And we're ripperologists.
We're unbafflable.
That's not a word.
I think it's a word.
I've done so much research on this one. I'm very, very pleased with the case I'm about to present. I think I've done it.
You think this is your white whale?
I didn't solve it, but I did a good job.
Oh, you just okay.
Let's
well,
get it.
you got me all excited.
The year is 1888. The stage, the shadowy and fog-filled streets of the East End of London. More specifically, the Whitechapel district, an area with a proclivity for violence and crime amongst the backdrop of poverty. But suddenly, a string of murders terrorized the public in a way never seen before. The culprit, a madman with no clear motive, the world's most notorious serial killer, Jack the Ripper. While most believe the Ripper claimed the lives of only 5, now referred to as the Canonical 5. Others believe the Ripper claimed the lives of up to 11 women. All 5 of the canonical victims were prostitutes, as many women in the Whitechapel district had to turn to prostitution as a way to survive. The morbid intrigue is not a recent development. At the time of the murders, literacy was increasing amongst the general population. The murders were covered in the newspaper, and the public became morbidly fascinated by them. In the end, the public was so upset at the failed attempts to identify the killer that the
Why don't you, I don't know, check your goddamn fucking kick? How about them apples?
police commissioner and home secretary eventually resigned.
Was this like one of the first instances of like sort of a media frenzy around something like this? Because
Yeah.
it sounds like OJ or Jean Benet.
I wonder if they had true crime shows back then.
I don't think they did, Ryan.
Like, well, I could see them have.
Oh. Huh. Friends. Okay.
Little sock puppets, like, like in Game of Thrones.
Okay, I can see that. Little puppets, yeah.
Yeah, little puppets.
I'm on board with that.
Also, touching on the police commissioner, I think this is the first time I've actually seen a police commissioner resign because he was so upset. And that makes sense to me because I've said this before, when there's a serial killer on the loose, you really are just playing cat and mouse with the killer.
Yeah.
And he's just getting outfoxed by him at every corner.
It's your whole livelihood.
That could drive you insane. I feel like that would drive me insane. Today, we're going to cover the 5 canonical victims, and by the end, we'll have examined the most suspects we've ever presented with 8 possible killers. Without further ado, let's jump into the timeline. On August 31st, 1888, at 3:40 a.m., the body of Mary Ann Nichols was found in Bucks Row in Whitechapel. The body was discovered by a man named Charles Cross, who claims he was walking along Bucks Row when he noticed a bundle toward the western end. Another man named Robert Paul approached the body with Cross. Police would eventually arrive on the scene. Mary Ann
Delayed
Nichols was found on her
notifications.
back,
Thank
her
you.
throat severely slashed, and she was disemboweled. It was determined she had only been dead for about a half hour, meaning the killer was likely nearby when Cross first saw the body.
Now, how did they, at this point in time, I don't know what their forensics are
Bad.
like, how do they know what a half
Excuse
hour
me.
is? Do they just sort of, like,
I mean, he just goes over.
let's see, that's half hour blood right there.
Yeah, that's 30 minutes. We got a bloodhound? I don't know.
That's not bloodhounds.
No, I don't know. I know bloodhounds use to track things, but I
feed them blood, they don't.
you don't bloodhounds bags of blood.
You feed a bloodhound some blood, and it barks for every minute.
And it goes A positive, universal donor. Right now, we're at the site of the first murder. This is Mary Ann Nichols. They found her at the western end of Bucks Row, which is now Durward Street. You can kind of see where it was, like, see that building right there with the white windows?
Yeah.
We can't go over there because there's construction now.
It's a growing city.
But just below that, and a little bit towards us, she was found in the gateway of one of the houses that lined the street before. Kind of similar to these gateways here. I mean, it's kind of weird to think that they didn't know this was the first of what would be, the most infamous serial killer of all time.
One crazy summer.
I'm done. I'm done.
On September 8th, 1888, the body of
Done.
Annie Chapman was found at
I'm
29
done.
Hanbury Street. Her body was discovered by a man named John Davis, an elderly resident of the 29 Hanbury Street building. Her throat was cut, and this time the violence escalated in
Don't
that the
try
murderer
to make friends
took her
anymore.
womb. So this is the approximate location of the second killing. Annie Chapman was killed at 29 Hanbury Street, but my sources have told me that street actually moved. 29 Hanbury Street is actually over there, but where it approximately happened back in the day was around like the entrance to Truman Brewery, which is like right there.
Imagine the pandemonium.
Dr. George Bagster Phillips was serving as the divisional police surgeon at the time and proposed the idea that the killer had anatomical knowledge by the manner in which Annie Chapman's womb was removed. That's the first clue. He's a doctor, probably. Or has basic anatomical knowledge. Later that month,
Fuck you
on
all.
September 27th, 1888, the Central News Agency receives a letter from the apparent killer. It reads, quote, "Dear boss, I keep on hearing the police have caught me, but they won't fix me just yet. I have laughed when they look so clever and talk about being on the right track. That joke about leather apron gave me real fits. I am down on whores and shan't quit ripping them till I do get buckled. Grand work the last job was. I gave the lady no time to squeal. How can they catch me now? I love my work and want to start again.
How
You will soon
about
hear
that?
me with my funny little games. I saved some of the proper red stuff in a ginger beer bottle over the last job to
You
write
really
with.
wanna fucking know
It went
why I'm
blue
so
and I
fucking
can't use
pissed?
it.
You
Writing
really
is
wanna
good
know?
enough, I hope. Ha ha. The next job I do, I shall clip the lady's ears
You're
off and
watching
send
right
to the
now.
police officers just for
Please
trolling
say
footage.
something, cause I will
Keep this letter
fucking
back till I do a bit more work. Then give it out
yell
straight.
at you right now.
Knife so nice and sharp, I want to get to work right away if I get a chance. Good luck. Yours truly, Jack the Ripper. Don't mind giving me the trade name. Wasn't good enough to post this before I got all the writing off my hands. Curse it, no luck yet. They say I'm a doctor now. Ha ha. End quote.
Ooh.
What a piece of work. Yeah, I gotta give it to him though. Jack the Ripper is a very catchy name. This guy had a knack for naming things.
He knows his brand. If this was happening today, or if social media existed during this time,
Oh, it's gonna be a Viner for sure.
he'd be a Viner. He'd have extensive hashtags on every post.
Insta good, Insta food.
Hashtag ripped.
This letter wasn't released to the public until October 1st, and many believe that it was fabricated by a journalist. But regardless, it made its way to the papers. Once in the eyes of the public, the name stuck, and the killer from that point on went by the now famous moniker, Jack the Ripper. 3 days later, on September 30th at 1 a.m., the body of Elizabeth Stride was found on Bernard Street by a man named Louis Deemschutz. Only her throat was cut, which led police to believe that the murder was interrupted when Deemschutz approached. Right now, we're walking up on the side of the second murder, Elizabeth Stride. She was found by a man right around here. This is now, I think, a schoolyard. A lot of people actually question whether or not this was the Ripper because her throat was cut rather hastily. None of the other little tricks that people know, disembowelment, none of that stuff. It's almost as if like he was walked up on and said, right, yeah, just let's murder this one quickly. I can't do the whole fixins here. It was determined that she was dead for 30 minutes when examined around 1:15 a.m. Shockingly, only 45 minutes after the discovery of Elizabeth Stride, another body was found in Meyer Square, just west of the Stride murder. A woman named Catherine Eddowes was the second victim in the same night. Her body was severely mutilated, including her face. Her uterus was removed as well as her left kidney. So only 45 minutes after the murder of Elizabeth Stride, investigators stumbled upon the body of Catherine Eddowes here.
Right here.
In this general area, there used to be a flower bed here that was kind of, in a way, served as a memorial for her, but this was just, like I said, 45 minutes after her murder had just happened, about 10, 15 minutes away, walking distance. And what's weird is that after he killed Catherine Eddowes here, he went back towards the direction of the first murder.
This guy knows how to zag.
Either that or
We lost to West Juggernaut. They blasting shit.
he just knew the police routes.
I think he's just a zagger.
So the body is back there. Right now we're walking somewhat near the path that he would have taken away, walking east away from the body. And then we're about to arrive at a site where he dropped one of the only clues he actually left investigators.
Ooh.
It's here that police would discover one of the few solid clues in the entire case. A piece of Catherine Eddowes' apron found near the scene of the crime. The apron was found by Alfred Long in the doorway of an apartment block near Goulston Street, a nearby street east of the Eddowes murder site. Near this apron, a message was written in chalk that read, quote, "The Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing," end quote, a sign of the anti-Semitism that was common in the area. However, the crucial detail of this clue is the fact that it was found east of the Eddowes murder site, in the direction of Elizabeth Stride's murder site, the murder that occurred just 45 minutes prior. This perplexing decision could mean that the killer willingly entered an area that was swarming with cops. Aside from demonstrating the killer's evasive abilities, this could suggest the killer lived in this East London area, as it possibly explains the motive for entering a dangerous situation. Later, a postcard is received by the police department, dated October 1st, and written by someone also claiming to be the Ripper with similar handwriting. Quote, "I was not codding dear old boss when I gave you the tip. You'll hear about Saucy Jackie's work tomorrow. Double event this time. Never once squealed a bit."
I'll be right back. I'm gonna go punch someone in the face. Fucking friends.
Couldn't finish straight off. Had not the time to get ears from police. Thanks for keeping last letter back till I got to work again. Jack the Ripper. End quote. This isn't confirmed, but there is information out there that this postcard was received by the press agency, or whoever received it, the morning after the night of the double event. The thing being there that's strange is none of the public knew about this double event because it hadn't been in papers yet. Yet this guy was able. Because it hadn't been in papers yet. Yet this guy was able. Because it hadn't been in papers yet. This guy was able. Because it hadn't been in papers yet. This guy was able. Because it hadn't been in papers yet. This guy was able. Because it hadn't been in to describe what happened in detail.
Yeah, because they're not running around.
No, I mean, there's not like
Two people got murdered tonight.
There's not
Pass,
Twitter.
pass it down.
Yeah, they're not playing a giant game of telephone with Dixie cuts. There isn't Twitter. So it's possible and quite likely that if the timing of this is true, this is Jack the Ripper. On the 13th of October in 1888, the police spent a week searching every house in the East End's worst slums, but found nothing. On October 16th, a man named George Lusk received a letter. Lusk, was the head of the Mileland Vigilance Committee, a group comprised of local businessmen to assist the police. The letter was signed, quote, "From hell," end quote, and it was delivered in a box with half a human kidney. The kidney at the time was believed to be Catherine Eddowes' missing kidney. However, it was found to be a prank by a medical student.
Wait, so the From Hell letter was a medical student? That's disappointing.
I suppose, yeah.
Because I love From Hell. Just that as a sign off. From Hell.
This kind of also demonstrates the climate surrounding this. Like,
Right.
people weren't like, this is the worst thing on earth. There are people
They're
thinking,
like, well, we can have fun with this.
wouldn't it be funny?
It's like the Ice Bucket Challenge. Let's everybody get. Involved in it.
Nearly a month later, on November 9th, 1888, the body of the fifth and final canonical victim, Mary Kelly, was found in 13 Miller's Court in her bed by her landlord's assistant, who was seeking rent. This murder was by far the most gruesome, as her body was disemboweled and, quote, virtually skinned down, end quote. This is the last victim. It's a little tricky because where there used to be an apartment building is now, as you can see, it's a parking lot or car park. So we can't really know where exactly it was, but we know it was near the church. We know it was near the 10 Bells pub. So we could be actually at the place of residence of Jack himself. Here's the landlord on the state of the body. Quote, "The sight that we saw, I could not drive away from my mind. It looked more like the work of a devil than of a man." End quote. And with that, we arrive at the end of the 5 canonical victims. But as stated before, some believe there could be up to 11 victims with Jack the Ripper's reign of terror. One should wonder if anybody caught a glimpse of this monster, and it would seem that people did. When aggregating eyewitness testimonies of those who believe they saw the Ripper, a rough outline of the killer can be visualized. It can be assumed that he was between 25 to 35 years old, roughly 5'5" to 5'7", stocky, with a fair complexion and a mustache. Allegedly, he was seen wearing a dark overcoat and a dark hat. The Scotland Yard's Violent Crime Command Team has said that Jack the Ripper, who one could call evil incarnated, could be described in appearance as, quote, perfectly sane, frighteningly normal, and yet capable of extraordinary cruelty, end quote. Sir Melville Macnaghten, the Scotland Yard's head of the Criminal Investigation Department in 1903, had a general suspicion of who the killer was. He knew that the Ripper had basic knowledge of anatomy, possibly a doctor, and in Macnaghten's notes, he had narrowed his list of suspects down to 3 names. That being said, due to the overwhelming amount of compelling suspects and the fact that many feel the official 3 are not the Ripper, we're going to examine 8 names, starting with Macnaghten's 3 official suspects. The first suspect was Montague Johnson Druitt. Druitt was a barrister who may have had an uncle and cousin who were doctors. Around the time of his death, Druitt may have been around the age of 40 and supposedly had an interest in surgery. Montague possibly lived with his cousin, who was practicing medicine close to where the Whitechapel murders occurred. It also appears that about a month before the first canonical murder, Montague's mother went insane, and Montague had written in a note that he
Yeah, I'm talking to you. Say something. Don't just sit there and watch me.
feared he was also going insane. In his notes, Macnaghten adds, quote, from private information, I have little doubt that his own family suspected this man of being the Whitechapel murderer.
Thank you. Hi. Hello. How are you? Ah, cool. That guy care.
It was alleged that he was sexually insane. End quote. After the final
Not great, but it's not like anyone cares.
murder, Montague disappeared, only to be found dead within 4 weeks of the last murder. His body was found floating in the Thames River on December 3rd, 1888.
I get this sense this is only the first suspect, but I have a hunch everyone we look at is going to have 10 things that make them sound like they are definitely Jack the Ripper, because London at the time sounds like it was full of insane psychopaths.
The second suspect was Michael Ostrog, a Russian doctor and a criminal. Ostrog had been in an asylum previously for homicidal tendencies. McNaughton notes that Ostrog couldn't provide a strong alibi for his whereabouts during the murders. Ultimately, he was not convicted because there wasn't enough evidence linking him to the crime.
How does a homicidal tendency work? You just dabble in murdering someone?
Yeah, I don't know if that's tendencies. You either murder someone or you don't. I can't imagine there's a half measure.
He only killed a nanny. It was a funny thing when he was 15.
The third suspect was Aaron Kosminski, a Polish and Jewish resident of Whitechapel who spent some time in an asylum in 1889 after the last murder. Kosminski would actually reside in asylums until his death in 1919. Kosminski was known for his hatred towards women, particularly prostitutes. According to McNaughton, his appearance matched descriptions provided by the police of a man in Mitre Square, which, if you'll recall, was the night of the double murder where the Ripper likely zigzagged between the police. Kosminski might be a name familiar to the public due to the fact that recently his name made headlines due to his being featured in a book entitled, quote, Naming Jack the Ripper, end quote. In this book, Russell Edwards claims that a shawl purchased at an auction contains DNA evidence proving Kosminski is the killer. The shawl was bought under the impression that it reportedly was found at the murder scene on the person of Catherine Eddowes, the fourth Ripper victim. Edwards enlisted the help of molecular biologist Jari Lohelainen of Liverpool John Moores University.
Yeah.
Edwards
Yarhe Lohenhagen. Sounds like a German name.
and Lohelainen believe the bloodstained shawl is connected to Catherine Eddowes, based off of comparison from one of Eddowes' descendants. They also claim that semen on the scarf is linked to relatives of Kosminski. With this discovery, many felt that the case was closed, including Edwards. Which is what was true. That's the smoking gun, right?
You got semen, you got blood.
Time to drag his name in the mud.
Oh, I like that. You got the semen, got the blood, drag his name on through that mud.
There you go.
That's not bad.
It isn't bad, but let's find out why we can't do that. Quote, I've got the only piece of forensic evidence in the whole history of the case. I've spent 14 years working on it, and we definitely solved the mystery of who Jack the Ripper was. Only non-believers that want to perpetuate the myth will doubt. This is it now. We have unmasked him. End quote.
So he's confident,
He's very confident.
but he's also spent a bunch of money and time on this.
He's all, I can understand why he's confident. He thought he had it from the beginning. Then he goes to a molecular biologist. That guy analyzes it and goes, yeah, I'd be gloating like.
I'll be right back, you guys. I'm gonna go get myself a drink. So I'll be right back. Okay, I have money to get myself a drink. Some of my Alright. And no one's watching my thing. Because they say I know who's watching
The
me.
fuck, Logan, can you imagine
Yeah.
that? Like, you just solved one of the greatest mysteries of all time because you got confirmation that you wanted to hear it.
But, much to the chagrin of Mr. Edwards, that may not be the case. It turns out that the scientist may have made a critical error of nomenclature. Summed up, Dr. Lulalainen identified a mutation in DNA on both the scarf and in Eddowes' relative named Karen Miller. This mutation was believed to be named 314.1C, a mutation only found in 1 in 290,000 people, making it very likely it was a match. However, this identification was reportedly incorrect and was not 314.1C, but instead 315.1C,
which is a mutation shared by more than 99% of people of European descent. Basically, this DNA could be anyone if true.
So it went from being it's that guy to it's one of those million people.
Basically, it was like, oh, the blood on this scarf and Edo's descendant have this very, very rare mutation. Oh, wait, I misnamed the mutation. It's actually this other one. Exactly. He hit a wrong keystroke, and then, oh, all of a sudden, 99% of European people have this mutation. Furthermore, Kosminski's DNA was linked to the scarf using mitochondrial DNA, using a subtype that is far from unique. Sir Alec Jeffreys, who's regarded as the godfather of DNA fingerprinting, has said that this evidence, quote, needs to be subjected to peer review.
Bye, Felicia. I'm not dealing with you anymore. I'm just not. So, goodbye.
You. No actual evidence has yet been provided. Further adding fuel to the fire of skeptics is the fact that Dr. Lulalainen has yet to publish this finding in a peer-reviewed scientific journal, and has refused to answer questions to news outlets, thus making it impossible to verify his and Edwards' claims, and effectively doing quite the opposite.
How did Edwards react to this?
Could you imagine getting the call, like this doctor having to pick up the phone and be like,
Hello?
remember that scarf I told you was a...
Why, yes, the most famous piece of evidence in the world.
Yeah, about that. I think my pinky may have hit the 5 when I was trying to hit the 4, and it turns out it's kind of useless and proves nothing. So all that smack you've been talking in the press kind of makes you look like a big fool.
I've wasted my life.
The fourth suspect is the notion that Jack the Ripper was actually a female, a theory that ripperologists call Jill the Ripper. This theory was allegedly a hunch of famed Inspector Aberline as well. The idea that all of the police were on the hunt for a man when they should have been searching for a woman would explain the Ripper being able to slip by without suspicion. Some had pointed out that a midwife would have sufficient anatomical knowledge, and blood on her clothing would have raised no eyebrows, though it should be pointed out that all eyewitness testimony points to a man. I love this theory. I think it makes sense that a woman would be able to, slide through the crowd in a way that all these not stupid police, but all these police would be able to, not pick up on it because they're looking for a man with a mustache. Far cry from a midwife covered in blood.
That's a little too Joss Whedon for me. Like, what did Jack the Ripper with a lady?
The fifth suspect is Prince Albert Victor Christian Edward, aka the Royal Conspiracy.
You know how they say you never trust someone with 2 first names? This guy's got 4 of them.
So that either doubles that mistrust or it cancels it out. Yeah. 4 names, fuck with me. That's what he said.
I'm gonna double it.
I'm gonna cancel it out.
Okay.
This theory is often scoffed at, but is still perpetuated due to its wild popularity. Prince Edward was known to frequent areas where the victims were found, an activity that led to him contracting syphilis, which some believe drove him to insanity. Some posit this also resulted in Albert having a child with a local woman, and Queen Victoria demanded that everyone who knew of the child to be taken care of. Some believe that the insanity spawned by syphilis drove him to commit the murders himself. Conspiracy theorists believe he was never discovered because royal aides assisted in covering his identity. However, as mentioned before, this theory is mostly regarded as ludicrous, as there is no substantial evidence to indicate its credibility. Looking into this, it's pretty clear that the movements of a prince, let alone or anybody that the queen would hire, would be able to be tracked. But I also do think they could cover it up. I don't know. I don't think it's that strong of a theory, but it is interesting.
I feel like if you've got so many things at your disposal, if you're a queen, you probably have guards. I don't know. You get away with a lot. Just grab people off the street.
The sixth suspect is famed painter Walter Sickert, a theory mainly posed by the successful crime novelist Patricia Cornwell. After making millions on her crime novels, Cornwell has devoted her time to the pursuit of Sickert as the Ripper. In 2001, Cornwell spent £2 million buying 32 of Sickert's paintings, letters, and even Sickert's writing desk in one bizarre stunt that was described by art curator Richard Schoen as, quote, monstrous stupidity. Cornwell went full national treasure Nicolas Cage by cutting up a painting in search of clues. Aside from stunts, Cornwell rightfully claims that Sickert was obsessed with the Ripper, which was true. Sickert referenced the Ripper in some of his paintings, even titling one, quote, Jack the Ripper's bedroom, end quote. Cornwell claims one painting mirrors the body position of fifth Ripper victim, Mary Kelly. She claims another painting mimics the facial wounds of fourth Ripper victim, Catherine Meadows. There are also reportedly accounts of Sickert cosplaying as Jack the Ripper. You realize this is before cosplay was a thing. I don't even know if Halloween was that big of a thing.
Are you kidding me? They had like Carnival, they had Venetian masks, they had a whole
You don't find it strange that a grown man is dressing up as Jack the Ripper for fun. No holiday.
This just feels like, when people shame furries and, just let them live their life. If they want to dress up like a pony.
Okay, this is the furthest thing from a furry. A furry is just dressing up as like a furry creature because you kind of you have a sexual thing.
Why are they so muscular all the time?
I don't care about that. Dressing up as a furry animal is a far cry from dressing up as a serial killer.
But it's like weird. It's like a horse with like pecs, right?
I think you're getting lost in the furry culture.
It's strange.
You just said people were
I'm
shaming them.
not shaming it. I don't understand it.
Cornwell also shoots down the notion that Sickert's alibi was that he was in France at the onset of the murders. She cites sketches that place him in London in music halls at the time of at least 3 killings. By the way, anybody could sketch anybody. That means if I drew a sketch of you murdering somebody back in the day, I could show up to the police station and be like, here it is. Here's evidence that Shane Madej, in cold blood, killed this woman dressed as a furry.
And I feel like you would do that.
And they'd be like, you're right, we've had a lot of reports that Shane Madej is in fact
Slap
a furry.
the cuffs on those hooves.
However, the biggest piece of her case is the analysis of forensic paper expert Peter Bauer. Bauer identified 3 of Sickert's letters and 2 of the Ripper's letters as coming from a handmade paper run of only 24 possible sheets. Basically, the odds of both the Ripper and Sickert both writing letters on a batch of paper that only had 24 copies in existence is relatively slim. And while that is undoubtedly compelling evidence, it should be reminded that all of the Jack the Ripper letters are unconfirmed. I think he probably didn't do it, but he is indeed a weirdo.
Yeah, he's a weirdo, but I don't think we need to throw him in jail for it.
The 7th suspect is Joseph Barnett, who is particularly suspicious as he actually lived with Mary Kelly, the final Ripper victim. In fact, Barnett may have lived in 10 different locations in East London, making him well versed in the area and capable of navigating back streets. Barnett worked as a fish porter, and it's believed that Barnett was in love with Kelly, according to an issue of the Daily Telegraph on November 10, 1888. Barnett referred to Mary Kelly as, quote, his wife, end quote, when she was in fact only a roommate. Barnett also disagreed with Mary's life as a prostitute and strived to make money to keep her off the streets. Quote, Marie never went on the streets when she lived with me, end quote. Some theorize that Barnett committed the first murders to scare Kelly off the streets, which for a time actually worked. But when Barnett lost his job, Kelly returned to the street to make ends meet. Their financial struggles often led to fights, and Barnett also disliked Kelly's love of gin. This culminated in one final fight over Kelly bringing home 2 different prostitutes, an act that Joseph found unacceptable. This fight apparently got violent. Even a window was broken. Shortly after, Barnett moved out, and only 10 days later, Mary Kelly was found dead in her apartment. After the murder, Barnett was questioned for 4 hours, but eventually set free. Having lived there, Barnett would have intimate knowledge